For Christmas, my parents gave me a book called How to Grow Up. My sister got plane tickets to Europe. So, I took their advice, and the next morning, they were calling me in a panic because that Christmas morning, my parents handed me a self-help book called How to Grow Up, a subtle, stinging declaration that I was still just a child, while my sister unwrapped tickets to Europe. What they meant as an insult, I swore that day, I would turn into the fight for my own life. I'm Mason, 21 years old, and until that day, I was still living with my parents during college, feeling perpetually stuck in a childhood that refused to end. Our Christmases were always picture perfect, like something from a holiday movie. Dad would whip up his famous pancakes, Mom her special hot chocolate, and we'd gather around our meticulously decorated Fraser fur. I woke up, genuinely excited that year, still holding on to that childlike anticipation, maybe because deep down, I was hoping for something that would finally make my parents proud. My father, Robert, had built his marketing firm from scratch into a regional powerhouse. He had clear expectations, excellence, direction, purpose. My mother, Diana, complemented his ambition with her own perfectionism, from her immaculate home to her carefully curated social image. And then, there was my sister, Bella. To my parents, Bella was everything I wasn't. She had a 4.0 GPA at Cornell, a 5-year plan mapped out since high school, and seemed to effortlessly meet every single expectation they ever had. She was home for the holidays before her planned semester abroad. "Let's do presents," Mom announced, clapping her hands. We settled into our usual spots. Dad, with his ceremonial precision, started handing out gifts, saving what he considered the best for last. Bella went first, tearing into packages that revealed designer clothes, a new laptop, and finally, a small envelope. Her shriek of delight when she opened it still echoes in my memory. Plane tickets to Europe, first class. Are you serious? Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged my parents. This is incredible. Dad beamed, a pride shining in his eyes that I rarely saw directed at me. You've earned it, sweetheart. Your academic achievements deserve to be rewarded. Mom nodded, adding, plus, it'll look wonderful on your resume. Cultural enrichment is so important. Then, all eyes turned to me. I unwrapped a heavy rectangle, a book. The cover showed a confident young man climbing a mountain. Asterisk How to Grow Up. Your guide to finding direction and purpose in your 20s. Asterisk. Oh, I managed, trying to hide the immediate sting of disappointment. Thanks. Dad's tone, once so enthusiastic for Bella, shifted, becoming almost clinical. We thought it might help you figure things out. You seem a bit adrift lately. Mom reached over to pat my knee. It got excellent reviews online. The author specializes in helping young men find their path. Bella, to her credit, looked uncomfortable. I'm sure it's really insightful, Mason. I forced a smile, but something inside me just withered. 3 years of community college, switching majors twice, average grades. In their eyes, it all screamed mediocrity, not the exploration or balancing act I felt it was. The rest of Christmas Day passed in a blur. I watched Bella meticulously photograph her plane tickets for Instagram, while my parents discussed all the amazing opportunities awaiting her in Europe. My book sat on the coffee table, untouched, a silent accusation. You should really start reading it. Dad commented that evening as he walked by. New year, new you, right? It wasn't the first time they'd made me feel inadequate. There was the time Dad introduced me to his business associates as still figuring things out, or when Mom would casually mention how the neighbor's son had already landed an internship at a prestigious firm. The constant comparisons to cousins, to friends' children, and always to Bella. After dinner, I retreated to my childhood bedroom, still adorned with high school sports trophies and posters my parents deemed immature. I texted Ethan, my best friend since middle school, asterisk Merry Christmas. Got a self-help book while sis got Europe. Asterisk his response came quickly. Asterisk ouch, that's cold. Asterisk I typed back. Asterisk tell me about it. What kind of book? Asterisk I snapped a photo of the cover and sent it. How to Grow Up. Seriously, that's like aggressively passive-aggressive. Yeah, I typed back. Makes me feel great. I tossed my phone aside and stared at the ceiling. The book lay on my nightstand, its cover model smirking at me with his perfect confidence and clear direction. Around midnight, unable to sleep and tired of feeling sorry for myself, I grabbed the book. "Fine," I muttered. "Let's see what wisdom you have to offer." I flipped it open, fully expecting to hate every word. But the introduction caught me off guard. Asterisk, growing up isn't what most people think. It's not about meeting others' expectations or following a predetermined path. True adulthood begins when you take ownership of your life and start making choices based on your own values, not those imposed on you. Asterisk, I sat up straighter. This wasn't what I expected at all. I turned the page. Suddenly, intensely interested in what else this book had to say. I stayed up until 4 a.m., devouring chapter after chapter. It wasn't the condescending lecture I'd anticipated. Instead, it offered practical advice about independence, self-determination, and breaking free from family patterns that keep you stuck in childhood roles. The book was divided into 5 core sections that resonated deeply with me. First, financial responsibility ***, the foundation of adulthood. This chapter broke down how continuing to rely on parents financially keeps you in a childlike position regardless of your age. It detailed creating budgets, building credit, and making financial decisions independently. Second, creating your life blueprint ***. Unlike the rigid 5-year plans my parents revered, this section emphasized identifying personal values and setting goals aligned with your own definition of success, not someone else's. Third, independent living skills. From cooking to basic home repairs, this practical section outlined the everyday competencies that build confidence and self-sufficiency. Fourth, setting healthy family boundaries. This chapter hit hardest. It described exactly how well-meaning parents can undermine adult children's independence by maintaining outdated dynamics and expectations. The solution, creating clear boundaries through actions, not just words. Fifth, finding mentors beyond family. The author explained how parents have limitations as guides into adulthood, especially when established patterns make it difficult for them to see you as an autonomous adult. Around dawn, I had an epiphany. My parents weren't just seeing me as failing to grow up. They were actively preventing it by treating me like a perpetual teenager. That small bedroom, still filled with childhood decorations. The curfews they still subtly suggested. The way they questioned my spending, my friends, my choices, all while wondering why I hadn't launched successfully. I grabbed a notebook and began drafting what the book called a 90-day transformation plan. First, priority, finding my own place. I opened my laptop and searched for affordable apartments near campus. Most were out of my price range on my current part-time retail salary, but I found listings for studios and room shares that might work with a better job, which led to priority 2, employment. I updated my resume according to the book's guidelines, emphasizing skills rather than just positions. I scoured job boards until I found several promising options, including an entry-level position at a local tech startup that offered flexible hours around class schedules. Financial calculations came next. I'd need first and last month's rent, utility deposits, basic furniture, and a financial cushion. The book recommended having 3 months of expenses saved before moving out. I calculated exactly what I'd need to save and by when. I also researched additional student loans and grants to ensure my education wouldn't be interrupted. The book was clear. Independence doesn't mean isolation. Use available resources wisely while building self-sufficiency. By the time my parents knocked on my door to ask why I hadn't come down for breakfast, I had a comprehensive plan laid out. I quickly tucked it under my pillow. "Have you been reading all night?" Mom asked, noticing the book on my lap. "Just getting started on your advice," I said, surprised at how neutral my voice sounded despite my internal excitement. "Well, don't take it too seriously," Dad chuckled from the hallway. "It's not like we expect you to transform overnight." Their casual dismissal only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't about spite, though. As I worked on my plan throughout the day, I realized I genuinely wanted the independence described in the book. The hurt from Christmas had merely been the catalyst. That afternoon, I called Ethan to share my plan. "You're really going to move out because of a book?" he asked skeptically. "Not because of the book," I clarified. "The book just made me see things clearly." I need to do this for me. Just don't do anything rash because you're mad at your parents, he cautioned. That's not really growing up. I know, I assured him. This isn't about them anymore. It's about becoming the person I want to be. That evening, I submitted applications to 7 jobs. The tech startup, Diginova Solutions, responded within hours, requesting an interview. The following week, I scheduled it during a time I knew my parents would think I was at my regular retail shift. My retail manager was surprised when I asked for more hours. Thought you wanted to focus on school. Plans change, I replied. I need to save up for something important. Every extra dollar went into a separate savings account my parents didn't know about. I started selling unused items online. I downloaded apps that paid me to complete market research surveys during downtime between classes. When I wasn't working or studying, I was reading the book, highlighting passages and making notes. The more I read, the more I recognized patterns in my family that had kept me stuck. The way accomplishments were measured against others rather than personal growth. How independence was theoretically encouraged but practically discouraged through subtle undermining. The Diginova interview went surprisingly well. The interviewer, a young team leader named Jackson, seemed impressed by my enthusiasm and willingness to learn. We need someone who can manage our social media and help with basic digital content, he explained. The hours are flexible, and there's room to grow if you show initiative. 2 days later, I received an offer with a salary that would make my plan possible within 3 months. I accepted immediately, but told no one except Ethan and my academic advisor, Dr. Reynolds, who helped me rearrange my class schedule to accommodate the new job. This sounds like a positive step, Mason, Dr. Reynolds said. Actually, I know someone who might be a good resource for you. He wrote down a name and number. Harold Jenkins runs several successful businesses in town. He mentors students occasionally. I'll introduce you via email. As January turned to February, my transformation was underway, invisible to my parents, who still saw only what they expected to see. By mid-February, I'd saved enough for a security deposit and first month's rent. The apartment I found wasn't fancy, a studio in an older building near campus, with scuffed hardwood floors and a kitchenette that had seen better days. But it was clean, safe, and most importantly mine. The property manager, Mrs. Mitchell, was a no-nonsense woman in her 70s who squinted at me suspiciously when I inquired about the unit. You look young. Ever lived alone before? No, ma'am, I answered honestly. But I'm ready to learn. Something in my earnestness must have convinced her. Rent's due on the 1st. No parties. Fix what you break. I don't tolerate drama. I signed the lease that day, arranging to take possession on the 1st of March. The timeline gave me 6 more weeks to prepare while continuing to live at home. Meanwhile, I met Harold Jenkins at a coffee shop near campus. Dr. Reynolds had made the introduction via email, and Harold suggested meeting in person. He was in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, and the relaxed confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. So, you're looking to make some changes, he said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. I explained my situation, feeling slightly embarrassed about being motivated by a Christmas gift that had hurt my feelings. Harold didn't judge. Sometimes the best motivation comes from unexpected places. The question is, what are you going to do with it? I showed him my plan, and he nodded approvingly. Comprehensive. But what's your long-term goal beyond moving out? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on independence that I hadn't thought much beyond it. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. I'm still figuring out what I'm good at and what I enjoy. That's more honest than most people your age. Harold said, listen, I need someone to help with digital marketing for a few of my businesses. It would be part-time, but it might complement what you're learning at Diginova. Interested? The opportunity to work with a successful entrepreneur while learning practical skills was exactly what the book had recommended. I accepted gratefully. With 2 jobs plus classes, my schedule became packed. I'd leave home early, telling my parents I was studying at the library when really I was working morning shifts for Harold. Then classes, followed by Diginova in the afternoon and evening. Some nights I wouldn't return home until after my parents had gone to bed. You're certainly out a lot these days, Mom commented one rare evening, when I was home for dinner. Just trying to stay on top of everything, I replied vaguely. Dad glanced up from his phone. Your grades better not be suffering with whatever you're doing. What he didn't know was that my grades were actually improving. The book had suggested finding study methods that matched your learning style rather than traditional approaches. I discovered I retained information better through audio recordings and practical application than through reading textbooks. Dr. Reynolds noticed the improvement during our bi-weekly check-ins. Whatever you're doing, Mason, it's working. Your last 2 papers showed significant improvement. While my academic and professional life flourished, I was also secretly preparing for the move. I purchased essentials gradually, dishes from a thrift store, bedding on sale, a desk from someone in my building who was moving. I stored everything in my car or at Ethan's apartment until moving day. During this time, Bella called regularly from Europe, her Instagram filling with photos of ancient architecture and new international friends. You should see the Louvre, Mason. It's mind-blowing. She gushed during one video call. For perhaps the first time, I felt genuinely happy for her. Without the old undercurrent of comparison and inadequacy. It looks amazing, Bella. I'm glad you're having such a great experience. How are things at home, she asked. The same, I said, choosing not to share my plans. Bella meant well, but she'd never been able to keep secrets from our parents. One evening in late February, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen when they thought I was in my room. Do you think we should convert Mason's room after Bella gets back? Mom asked. She mentioned wanting a home office space when she starts her summer internship. Might light a fire under him, Dad replied. 21 and still no clear direction. I'm starting to worry he'll never leave. Robert, he's still young. I was married with a mortgage and starting my business at his age. Different times, Mom sighed. But I agree. He needs more motivation. That book doesn't seem to have made much impact. Their words stung, but differently than before. Now, I felt sorry for them. Sorry they couldn't see the changes I was making. Sorry our relationship had become so superficial that they had no idea who I really was or what I was capable of. The next day at Diganova, I met Amelia. She worked in the graphic design department and stopped by my desk to discuss a social media campaign we'd be collaborating on. With wavy brown hair and intelligent green eyes, she carried herself with the quiet confidence I was working to develop. You're new here, right? She asked. How are you liking it so far? Our conversation extended through lunch and into coffee after work. I found myself telling her everything. My situation, the book, my parents, the secret apartment. That's actually pretty impressive, she said. Most people just complain about their parents, but never do anything to change the dynamic. I'm still nervous about it, I confessed. What if I fail? Then you learn and adjust, she shrugged. That's what adults do. Her matter-of-fact support was refreshing after years of my parents' conditional approval. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, Amelia became another pillar in my support system, offering practical advice about living independently and occasionally helping me transport items to my new apartment in preparation. By the end of February, everything was in place. I'd saved 3 months' worth of expenses. My new apartment was partially furnished and stocked with essentials. I'd arranged for utilities to be connected. My jobs were going well, and I'd even begun building a small emergency fund. The night before my planned move, I wrote a letter to my parents explaining my decision, explicitly referencing the book they'd given me and how it had inspired me to take charge of my life. I placed it in an envelope on my desk, ready for the next day, when they would be attending an overnight business conference 2 hours away. As I looked around my childhood bedroom one last time, I felt a complex mix of emotions, anxiety about the unknown, sadness for the relationship I wished I'd had with my parents, but predominantly, exhilaration for the life I was choosing to create. The 1st of March arrived with unexpected sunshine after weeks of gray winter skies. I took it as a good omen. My parents had left early that morning for Dad's business conference, kissing me absently on the forehead like I was still 10 years old. There's money for pizza on the counter, Mom said. We'll be back tomorrow evening. Got it. Have a good trip, I replied, knowing it was the last time I'd have this conversation in this house. The moment their car disappeared down the street, I called Ethan and Amelia. They arrived within the hour. Ethan's truck, ready to transport the Remaining furniture I'd claimed, my desk, bookshelf, and the comfortable reading chair that had been in my room since high school. You sure about this? Ethan asked as we carried the desk down the stairs. More sure than I've been about anything, I confirmed. Amelia was methodically boxing up my books and electronics. Your parents really have no idea? None. They see what they expect to see. We worked efficiently, and by early afternoon, my childhood bedroom was half empty. I'd left behind anything that represented the child they thought I still was. Sports trophies, old gaming posters. The twin bed I'd long outgrown. What remained looked like a guest room with a few personal touches. Before leaving, I placed the letter prominently on the kitchen counter where they'd be sure to see it when they returned. It read, "Dear Mom and Dad, asterisk by the time you read this, I will have moved into my own apartment. The book you gave me for Christmas, How to Grow Up, helped me realize it was time to take full responsibility for my life and future. I've secured a new job, arranged my class schedule, and saved enough to support myself. I've also found mentors who believe in my potential. Asterisk. I'll always be grateful for everything you've provided, but now it's time for me to provide for myself. I hope you'll respect my decision, even if you don't initially understand it. Asterisk. I'll call you next week after we've all had some time to process this change. Love, Mason." I included my new address, but not my phone number. They already had that. Standing in the doorway of the house I'd lived in my entire life, I felt a momentary panic. Was I making a huge mistake? Then I remembered my parents' conversation about converting my room, their dismissive comments, and the constant comparison to Bella. I closed the door firmly behind me. My new apartment was exactly as Mrs. Mitchell had shown it. Small, somewhat worn, but with good, natural light and the promise of becoming something more. The previous tenant had painted the walls a pale blue that brightened the space. My few pieces of furniture looked lost in the open studio layout. "It's a blank canvas," Amelia said encouragingly, helping me arrange my desk near the window. Ethan returned from his third trip, carrying a housewarming gift, a small toolkit. "For all the adulting you'll be doing," he joked. After they left, I stood alone in my new home, the reality of my decision sinking in. That first night was a strange mix of exhilaration and terror. The building creaked in ways I wasn't used to. The neighbor's muffled television penetrated the thin walls. The ancient radiator clanged alarmingly around midnight. I discovered immediate issues. The kitchen faucet dripped constantly. The shower took 4 minutes to produce hot water, and the refrigerator hummed so loudly it was difficult to ignore. But they were my problems now, in my space. Using Ethan's toolkit and YouTube tutorials, I fixed the dripping faucet that first night. That small victory felt more significant than any academic achievement my parents had ever dismissed. The next day, my phone began ringing around noon, earlier than I'd expected. My parents must have returned from the conference early. Mom called first, then Dad, then Mom again. Text messages followed. Asterisk Mason, call us immediately. Where are you? This isn't funny. We're coming home now. Asterisk I silenced my phone. The book had emphasized the importance of establishing boundaries from the beginning. Responding immediately to their panic would set a precedent I didn't want. Instead, I attended my afternoon classes, then worked my shift at Diganova. Amelia brought me coffee around 5 o'clock. "How many times have they called?" she asked. I checked my phone. 27 missed calls and 34 text messages. "Wow, that's intense. They've never not known where I am," I explained. "This is new territory for all of us." By evening, the messages had escalated to threats of calling the police and checking hospitals. I finally texted back a brief message. Asterisk I'm safe. Please read my letter. I'll call tomorrow. Asterisk their response was immediate. Come home now. I turned off my phone and focused on organizing my new kitchen. The next day, my parents ambushed me outside my morning class. They must have remembered my schedule. Mom's eyes were red from crying, while Dad looked angrier than I'd ever seen him. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded, causing nearby students to stare. I'm going to class, I replied calmly. We can talk later in a more appropriate setting. We'll talk now, he insisted, grabbing my arm. I gently but firmly removed his hand. No, we won't. I have class. I can. Meet you at Riverside Coffee at 4 this afternoon. Mom started crying again. Mason, please just come home. Whatever point you're trying to make. It's not a point, Mom. It's a life choice. I'll see you both at 4 o'clock if you want to talk civilly. I walked into the building, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. The coffee shop meeting was tense from the start. My parents arrived early and selected a table in the corner, both looking like they hadn't slept. How could you do this to us? Mom began before I'd even sat down. I didn't do anything to you, I replied. I made a decision about my own life. Dad leaned forward. After everything we've given you, this is how you repay us? With a letter and an empty room. I'm grateful for everything you've provided, I said, sticking to the script I'd mentally prepared. But the book you gave me made me realize it was time to stand on my own. The book? Mom looked confused. What book? Asterisk How to Grow Up asterisk. My Christmas present. They exchanged glances. That was just a stocking stuffer, Dad dismissed. We didn't expect you to take it. Literally. Maybe you should have, I suggested, because it had some excellent advice about becoming independent and establishing healthy adult relationships with parents. The conversation deteriorated from there. They listed all the ways I was being ungrateful, impulsive, and foolish. They questioned how I could afford an apartment, where I got the furniture, who helped me move. They demanded to see my new place immediately. I held firm. I'm not asking for your approval or permission. I'm informing you of my decision as one adult to others. I'd like to have a relationship with you both, but it needs to be different than before. We left the coffee shop with nothing resolved. Mom was crying again, and Dad warned me I'd come crawling back when I failed at this independence experiment. As I walked back to my apartment, I felt hollow. I'd stood my ground, but the cost seemed enormous. For the first time, I questioned whether I'd made the right choice. That night, I experienced the silence of true independence. No sounds of my parents watching. Television downstairs. No mom checking if I needed laundry done. No expectations, but also no safety net. The following weeks were a roller coaster. My parents alternated between angry messages, pleading, calls, and cold silence. They showed up at my workplace until my manager asked them to leave. They sent Bella, who had returned early from Europe due to the family emergency, to convince me to come home. To her credit, Bella didn't push too hard. They're a mess, Mason. Mom barely sleeps and Dad is distracted at work. I'm sorry they're struggling, I said sincerely. But this was necessary. She looked around my small apartment with undisguised curiosity. It's actually kind of nice. Needs some decoration, but it's yours. Exactly. Through it all, Harold continued mentoring me, offering perspective from someone who'd navigated his own complicated family dynamics. Parents struggle when their children make choices they wouldn't make. Doesn't mean you're wrong, just different. Amelia became a steady presence, helping me navigate landlord issues and teaching me to cook simple meals. Our relationship deepened as she saw me standing firm despite the pressure. Most guys I know would have caved by now, she observed one evening as we shared a homemade pasta dinner in my gradually improving apartment. I can't go back, I realized aloud. Not to who I was before. The hardest moments came when doubt crept in, when my car needed unexpected repairs that nearly depleted my emergency fund, when I got sick and had to work anyway because bills don't care if you have a fever, when I missed the comfort of my mother's cooking or my father's admittedly useful advice about car maintenance. But with each challenge faced and overcome, my confidence grew. I was becoming the person the book had described, someone who took ownership of his life, made independent choices, and learned from mistakes rather than avoiding them. By June, 3 months into living on my own, the reality of adult independence had fully set in. The initial excitement had given way to the mundane responsibilities that come with self-sufficiency. Bills arrived with relentless regularity. The apartment needed constant attention, cleaning, minor repairs, maintenance, grocery shopping, cooking, and laundry consumed time I hadn't appreciated when my mother handled these tasks. Financial pressure became my constant companion. An unexpected rate increase from the electric company threw off my carefully planned budget. My car's transmission warning light came on, requiring an $800 repair I hadn't anticipated. The coffee shop where I Studied raised their prices, adding another small but irritating expense. Academic challenges mounted as final exams approached. Balancing my course load with 2 part-time jobs left little time for proper study. My grades remained better than before my move, but the stress was taking a toll. I found myself snapping at Ethan over minor issues and being distracted during conversations with Amelia. "You seem really tense lately," she commented one evening as we walked across campus. "Everything okay?" "Just busy," I replied shortly, not wanting to admit how overwhelmed I sometimes felt. Our relationship suffered as my free time diminished. We'd been dating officially for about 2 months, but lately our interactions had been limited to quick lunches between classes or her bringing coffee to my apartment while I studied. "I feel like I'm dating your schedule, not you," she finally said after I canceled dinner plans for the 3rd time in 2 weeks. "I'm doing the best I can," I defended, my tone sharper than intended. "This is all new to me." "I know that," she countered, "but you're not letting anyone help. You're trying to prove something by doing everything alone." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Was I rejecting support to prove my independence? The book had emphasized interdependence as the goal, not isolated self-sufficiency. That week brought a particularly difficult series of challenges. The washing machine in my building broke, forcing me to spend precious time and quarters at a laundromat. A group project partner dropped out last minute, leaving me with double the work. And finally, my laptop, essential for both school and work, crashed catastrophically. Sitting on my apartment floor, surrounded by disassembled computer parts, I had no idea how to fix it. I considered calling my dad. He'd know what to do. For a brief moment, I contemplated moving back home. Life had been easier there, despite the constant judgment. Pride stopped me from making the call. I'd made such a dramatic exit. Returning would validate everything they believed about my immaturity and impulsiveness. Instead, I called Harold and explained my computer situation. "Bring it to my office tomorrow," he said without hesitation. "My IT guy can take a look." Harold noticed my exhaustion when I arrived. The next morning, "You look like hell, Mason." "Thanks," I replied dryly. "Just a rough week." He invited me into his office while the IT department examined my laptop. "Want to talk about it?" I found myself unloading everything. The financial struggles, academic pressure, relationship tension, and the nagging doubt about my decision. Harold listened without interruption, then said, "Sounds like normal growing pains to me." "Normal? Did you expect independence to be easy?" "The book shouldn't have suggested that." "It didn't," I admitted. "I just didn't realize how relentless it would be." "That's the part no one tells you," Harold nodded. "It's not any single challenge that gets you. It's the constant succession of them with no breaks in between." "But here's what I see. 3 months ago, you were a kid playing at being grown up. Now you're actually doing it, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." His perspective helped shift my thinking. I wasn't failing at independence. I was experiencing the normal challenges of it. That afternoon, I received an unexpected opportunity. During a meeting at Diganova, I suggested a new approach to a struggling client's social media strategy. My analysis showed that their current targeting was completely misaligned with their actual customer base. Jackson, my supervisor, looked impressed. "That's actually brilliant, Mason. Can you put together a presentation for the client?" Meeting tomorrow, I stayed late creating a comprehensive analysis and strategy proposal. The next day, the client loved it so much they requested I personally manage their account moving forward, with a corresponding increase in my hours and pay. This small professional win boosted my confidence tremendously. I used the additional income to repair my financial cushion and invest in some quality of life improvements for my apartment: a better mattress, a more efficient coffee maker, and actual artwork for the walls. I also made time to properly apologize to Amelia. "You were right," I told her over dinner at my place, a meal I'd carefully prepared using skills learned from YouTube cooking channels. I was trying to do everything alone to prove a point. She accepted my apology with characteristic grace. "Independence doesn't mean isolation, Mason. It means choosing your connections rather than having them chosen for you." In late June, Bella returned from Europe permanently. Despite my parents' attempts to use her as a mediator, She respected my boundaries and began visiting my apartment regularly, bringing small housewarming gifts each time, plants, books, kitchen gadgets. There, still mad, she informed me during one visit, but more hurt than anything. Mom keeps your room exactly as you left it. How are they otherwise? I asked, genuinely curious. Dad's business is doing well. Mom's joined some community board. They talk about you, but mostly when they think I can't hear. I nodded, unsurprised. And what do you think about all this? Bella was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I think you did something brave. They've always had different standards for us. I got away with things you never could. Got praised for things you never did. It wasn't fair. Her acknowledgement of the disparity I'd felt my entire life was unexpectedly healing. My apartment gradually transformed from a sparse necessity into a true home. I painted one wall dark blue to create a focal point. Mrs. Mitchell, my property manager, noticed my improvements and began stopping by with unexpected advice and occasional home-cooked meals. My late husband and I started in a place smaller than this, she told me. It's not where you live that matters, it's how you live. There. Mrs. Mitchell's practical wisdom became another source of guidance. She taught me how to properly patch drywall, silence squeaky floors, and cook meals that could stretch across multiple days. Her no-nonsense approach reminded me that adulthood wasn't about having all the answers. It was about being resourceful enough to find them. Meanwhile, my parents tried new tactics to bring me home. They sent care packages with homemade cookies and gift cards. They offered to pay off my student loans if I'd reconsider my living situation. Dad even suggested I could work for his company with a real adult salary. I maintained firm but respectful boundaries, accepting the care packages with thanks, but declining the conditional offers. Our interactions remained tense but civil, primarily through text messages and occasional brief phone calls. In July, the family dynamic shifted dramatically when Dad's business faced an unexpected crisis. His main client, representing nearly 40% of the company's revenue, was considering moving their account to a larger agency. The client claimed Dad's firm wasn't innovative enough in the digital space, ironically, exactly the area where I'd been developing expertise. Mom called me directly, something she rarely did. Your father would never ask this himself, but his business is in trouble. The Townsend account is threatening to leave. I knew Richard Townsend from business dinners at our home over the years. He'd always been polite to me, but dismissive in that way adults often are with teenagers. I'm sorry to hear that, I said cautiously. Why are you telling me? Because you work in digital marketing now, Mom said. And because despite everything, you're still part of this family. The conversation left me conflicted. Part of me wanted to maintain the separation I'd established. Another part recognized an opportunity to demonstrate my growth while potentially helping my family. After discussing it with Harold, I called my father directly. Mom told me about the Townsend situation. I might be able to help. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. What did you have in mind? I need to see your current strategy first, I said. But I have experience with similar clients now. This isn't a game, Mason. This is my livelihood. I'm well aware, I replied evenly. That's why I'm offering professional assistance, not playing family politics. Another long pause. Fine. Come to the office tomorrow morning. As I hung up, I realized this would be the first time my father would see me as a potential colleague rather than just his son. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Walking into my father's office building the next morning felt surreal. I'd visited many times, growing up, but always as Robert's boy. Today, I carried a portfolio and wore business casual attire rather than the jeans and t-shirts Dad had always criticized. His assistant, Jennifer, who had known me since I was 10, did a double take. Mason, you look different. Professional growth. I smiled. Is he ready for me? Dad and Richard Townsend were waiting in the conference room. Richard looked surprised to see me. Mason, you're the digital consultant? He looked at my father questioningly. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Mason has been working in digital marketing. He offered some insights. I extended my hand to Richard. It's good to see you again, Mr. Townsend. I Understand you have concerns about the digital strategy for your account. The meeting was initially awkward. Dad seemed torn between wanting help and being uncomfortable with me providing it. Richard was skeptical but willing to listen. I presented an analysis of their current approach, identifying key weaknesses and opportunities they were missing. Your target demographic has shifted significantly in the past 18 months, I explained, showing charts from my research. But your digital strategy is still aimed at the previous audience profile. Richard leaned forward with interest. Go on. For the next hour, I outlined a comprehensive digital revitalization that would better connect with their evolving customer base. I demonstrated similar strategies I'd implemented at Diganova, showing concrete results. This is impressive, Richard admitted, glancing at my father. Why haven't we discussed these approaches before, Robert? Dad looked uncomfortable. We've been developing new strategies, not like this, Richard countered. This is exactly what we've been asking for. After Richard left, promising to reconsider his decision to move the account, Dad and I sat in awkward silence. Where did you learn all that? He finally asked. On the job. From mentors. From necessity, I replied. The positions you thought were wastes of time were actually building valuable skills. He nodded slowly. Your presentation was better than what my team developed. It was the closest thing to professional praise I'd ever received from him. I could help implement it. I offered, as a consultant, not as your son. Dad seemed to struggle with the concept. Let me think about it. Mom insisted on a family dinner that weekend. I agreed, with the condition that they come to my apartment rather than me returning to their house. They'll hate that, Bella warned when I told her my plan. It's important they see me on my terms, I explained, not as someone who failed and came crawling back. To my surprise, they accepted. The dinner was a tense affair initially. Mom couldn't stop herself from reorganizing my kitchen while I cooked. Dad inspected everything, looking for flaws to confirm his belief that I was struggling. The water pressure is terrible in this building, he commented after using my bathroom. I've adjusted to it, I replied simply. The conversation remained superficial until Mom noticed the book, their Christmas gift, prominently displayed on my bookshelf. You really did take that book seriously, she said, sounding puzzled. It gave me perspective I needed, I replied. Maybe you should read it. We didn't actually read it before giving it to you, Dad admitted unexpectedly. It was a last-minute gift. We were more focused on Bella's Europe trip. His honesty created an opening. That was part of the problem, I said carefully. You both had such different expectations for Bella and me. I felt like I was constantly falling short no matter what I did. That's not true, Mom protested. We just wanted you to find direction. No, Bella interjected. Mason's right. You've always had different standards for us. You gave me freedom and supported my choices. With Mason, you questioned everything. I was grateful for her support, but tried to keep the conversation productive. I needed to prove to myself that I could be independent, that I could make good decisions without your approval. Dad looked around my apartment with new eyes. And have you proven it to yourself? I'm getting there, I answered honestly. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. The dinner ended with tentative peace. We hadn't resolved everything, but real conversation had begun. The following week, Dad called me officially. We'd like to hire you as a consultant for the Townsend account, he said, his tone strictly professional. Richard specifically requested you. I accepted, establishing clear boundaries about my role and compensation. My experience with Harold had taught me the importance of keeping business arrangements formal, even with family. Working with my father professionally revealed sides of each other we'd never seen. He witnessed my competence and creativity firsthand. I saw his business acumen and the pressures he faced. We developed a mutual respect that had been missing from our personal relationship. Richard was impressed enough with the initial results that he not only kept his business with Dad's firm, but increased their services. During one meeting, he said something that changed the family dynamic permanently. No, Robert, you never mentioned Mason had such talent. You've been hiding quite an asset. My father looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time. Yes, he said slowly. I'm beginning to realize that. After the meeting, he asked if I had time for coffee. We sat in Uncomfortable silence until he finally spoke. I owe you an apology, Mason. I've been trying to make you into a version of me instead of seeing who you actually are. The admission stunned me. I just wanted you to be proud of me, I confessed. But it seemed like nothing I did was ever enough. Because I was measuring you against my own journey, not yours. He stared into his coffee. When I was your age, I was terrified of failing. I think I projected that onto you. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Mom made her own overture a week later. She called to tell me she'd finally read the book they'd given me for Christmas. It wasn't what I expected, she admitted. It made me realize we've been keeping you dependent while complaining about your lack of independence. That's exactly what I needed to hear 6 months ago, I said. I know. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. Gradually, our relationship transformed. My parents began treating me as an adult with his own life, rather than an extension of their expectations. They asked about my work with genuine interest. They respected my boundaries and called before visiting. Mom stopped trying to rearrange my apartment, and Dad stopped pointing out everything that needed fixing. Bella noticed the change during a family dinner at their house in August. They're different with you now, she whispered while our parents were in the kitchen. They actually listen when you talk. It's been a long road, I acknowledged. Worth it though, right? Looking at my sister now, a friend rather than a measuring stick, I nodded. Definitely worth it. 1 year after that fateful Christmas, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. My studio apartment, once sparse and utilitarian, had become a comfortable home, reflecting my personality. Plants thrived on the windowsills. Bookshelves held volumes I'd actually read, and the walls displayed art I'd chosen myself. My relationship with Amelia had deepened into something solid and mutually supportive. She'd taught me that independence didn't mean doing everything alone. It meant choosing interdependence based on respect rather than obligation. Academically, I'd found my stride. My grades were consistently strong, and I declared a major in digital marketing with a minor in entrepreneurship. Dr. Reynolds had become a trusted advisor, connecting me with opportunities that aligned with my newly discovered strengths. Professionally, I'd advanced at Diganova to manage my own portfolio of clients. My consulting work had expanded beyond my father's company to include several small businesses referred by Harold, who continued to mentor me with the perfect balance of guidance and autonomy. Most significantly, my relationship with my parents had evolved into something healthier and more authentic. The journey hadn't been linear. We still had occasional misunderstandings and moments of falling back into old patterns. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted from parent-child to adult-adult. To mark the anniversary of my independence, I invited my parents, Bella, Amelia, and Harold to dinner at my apartment. Mrs. Mitchell had helped me plan the menu and perfect her secret recipe, lasagna that had become my signature dish. As we gathered around my expanded dining table, a recent investment, I felt a sense of pride in creating this moment, bringing together the various people who had supported my journey in different ways. Mom brought wine and flowers. The place looks wonderful, Mason. You've really made it your own. Dad carried a wrapped gift box. We brought something for you. Call it a 1-year anniversary present. After dinner, as we enjoyed coffee and the apple pie Amelia had baked, Dad pushed the gift across the table to me. Go ahead, open it. Inside was a book titled How to Be Great Parents, Supporting Your Adult Children Without Controlling Them. The table fell silent until I started laughing. After a moment's hesitation, Dad joined in, followed by everyone else. We thought it was appropriate. Mom explained, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. We've been doing some growing up, too. I appreciate that, I said sincerely. It hasn't been easy for any of us. No, Dad agreed. But necessary. I look at you now, the work you're doing, the life you're building, and I see a man I respect. Not because you're following my path, but because you've created your own. Harold raised his glass to growth in unexpected places. Later, after everyone had left except Amelia, we sat on my second-hand but comfortable couch. You know what's ironic? I'm used. That book was actually the perfect gift, just not in the way they intended. Sometimes the best presents are the ones that challenge us, she replied, resting her head on my shoulder. In the years since striking out on my own, I'd learned lessons no book could fully convey. I discovered that true independence isn't about separation from others, but about engaging with them from a place of self-knowledge and strength. I'd learned that family relationships can evolve if both sides are willing to see each other anew. Most importantly, I'd learned that growing up isn't a destination, but a continuous process, one that even my parents were still navigating in their own way. The journey hadn't been easy. There were nights I'd questioned everything, moments I'd nearly given up. The financial struggles were real, the loneliness sometimes overwhelming, the responsibilities relentless. But sitting in my own space, with the life I'd consciously built around me, I knew I wouldn't trade this hard-won independence for the comfortable constraints of my old life. Sometimes you have to leave to find your way back. Sometimes a relationship needs to break before it can heal properly. And sometimes the most painful gift becomes the most valuable one. As Amelia and I discussed moving to a slightly larger apartment in the spring, I felt grateful for every step of the journey, even the painful ones. The book that had once felt like an insult now held a place of honor on my shelf, a reminder that growth often comes from unexpected catalysts. Have you ever received a gift that changed your life in ways you never expected, or had to make a difficult choice that ultimately led to something better? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating the complicated path to adulthood. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most difficult roads lead to the most beautiful destinations.